Hi everyone, my name is Raina. I am an occupational therapist with Autism Services for Teens and Young Adults. Today we are going to be talking about the job search process and the barriers that come up throughout that process. If you're watching this, you are probably an autistic teen or young adult who's looking for a job and you don't know where to start, or you are a parent of an autistic teen or young adult and you are trying to help your child get started with that process. So it can be daunting, and if you're a parent, you might feel like my child is lazy or unmotivated, which is not necessarily the case. We really believe that the job search process, how it's typically set up, is just not always conducive to how everyone's brain is wired. And we're going to talk about why that is and what you can do to make the process a little bit easier. But before we get into that, let me introduce us. We are Autism Services for Teens and Young Adults. We are licensed occupational therapists, and we help autistic teens and young adults take their first real steps towards getting a job. We are trained in understanding and working with people who are neurodivergent and understanding how their brains work. And we also learn techniques to help people successfully get jobs and adapt things for their own personal benefit. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do or reaching out to us, please check out our website. It's in the link below. Okay, so let's talk about what makes the job search process, I should say, so daunting and so difficult for people with autism specifically. So the typical way that most people get a job is they make a resume and then they go online and apply for a bunch of jobs, and then some of those companies email them back or call them and set up an interview. You do an interview and then you might get a job offer. But for autistic teens and young adults, there are a lot of really big barriers that can get in the way of making those steps happen. The first one is executive functioning. Executive functioning, if you don't already know, is happening in the frontal lobe of the brain, right in front. And people call it the CEO of the brain because it's making all the decisions, it's planning ahead, it's like working on the highest level, basically. It's prioritizing things and following through, so it's doing a lot. And if you have trouble with those things, which a lot of people on the autism spectrum do have trouble with executive functioning, then it's going to make the job search feel completely daunting, even if you really want a job. So let's go over some examples of where you might be getting stuck because of difficulties with executive functioning. One is called task initiation. That's just getting started doing something. That can be difficult, not because you're just lazy and unmotivated. It's not about you, it's about your brain. Your brain is making it hard to do that. Another thing is something called response inhibition, which an example of that is like stopping yourself from interrupting somebody or filtering what you're saying, so not saying something inappropriate in an interview. Organizational skills like managing the job search and preparing for your interview, getting all your stuff together before the interview. There's something called goal persistent behavior, which is pursuing the job search even when you get a lot of rejections, which most people do get a lot of rejections. That like drive to keep going even when you're getting a lot of no's is part of executive functioning. Other things, emotional control, which would be like staying calm in an interview when you're really nervous. Mental flexibility, if someone in an interview asks a question you were not expecting, it takes mental flexibility and executive functioning to be able to pivot and think of an answer right there. And then time management. So like if you sit down and say, I'm going to apply for jobs for half an hour today, and then you spend 5 minutes applying for jobs and then 25 minutes scrolling, that's an example of maybe some not so great time management. So those are all examples of executive functioning skills and how they can impact your job search. But here's the good news. This isn't just forever permanent way that your brain works. The brain is really cool because it can always change and it can always learn. You can get better at these things, is what I'm trying to say. You just have to practice, and it's like a muscle. It's like training for a sport. You have to practice these skills. One really important thing you can do is to find an accountability buddy to help encourage you during the job search. If you are a parent, you can support your teen by helping them to create a schedule and set alarms, like maybe every Saturday at 2 p.m. an alarm's going to go off, and that means you're going to apply for jobs for 30 minutes, something like that. Something that is easy, manageable for everyone, and so you can keep each other, or not keep each other accountable, but like someone is helping you stay accountable. Another thing you can do is just block time. So you can pick an amount of time that feels reasonable to you. Could be 15 minutes. 15 minutes, you can apply for some jobs in 15 minutes if you have a resume. It actually goes really, really fast. I think it's better to do 15 minutes every day for a week versus an hour and 30 minutes on a Saturday, because that can be really overwhelming. Things come up and then you say, oh, I can't do it this week, I have a soccer game. Well, then 6 weeks go by and you haven't done it. So try to do it in little chunks rather than all at once. And that'll make it less daunting for your brain and help your executive functioning, actually. Another really good thing to do is to write your goal on an index card and place it near your computer. So it's really helpful just to have a visual, and you can see it every day and remind yourself why you're actually doing this. And that will help your goal persistent behavior, which we talked about. Also, highly recommend making a folder either on your computer or on Google Drive to list every company or every place you've applied to. Some people have to apply to a ton of jobs before they get called back or hired. I know that's happened to me. And it was really helpful to write a list, because otherwise I would have forgotten completely where I even applied to. I would have been repeating myself on accident, applying to the same place multiple times, or just not knowing, like, this person emailed me from this company. I don't even know what the job was. So write down the name of the company, the position title of the job that you applied for, and the day that you applied. Anything else you think is relevant too, you can add. But just keeping a list is really, really nice to stay organized. Okay, you can also attend job fairs. If you don't know what a job fair is, it's basically like a big room where a bunch of companies will come set up tables, and they have someone standing there who works for the company, and basically the company is there because they are hiring. They want to hire more people, and they're trying to just get out there and meet people that might want to work for them. So this is a good opportunity because you can kind of walk around and talk to people and see what kind of places are hiring. And this is a really good way if you give them your email, or they can give you their card, and then you can email them after and say, hey, I met you at this job fair. It was nice to meet you, and I'm interested in working here. Here's my resume. That's how a lot of people get jobs. So I would really recommend going to one of those. We've talked about this in some other videos, but another thing that we might not have talked about is that there are sensory-friendly job fairs specifically for neurodivergent people. So if big crowds or really compact rooms make you feel really uncomfortable or claustrophobic, there might be a sensory-friendly job fair in your area. You'll just have to look it up and see. But if there's an autism society near you, you can research and reach out to them and ask if they know of anything also. And those sensory-friendly ones are just going to be less noisy and less like squished in. There'll be a little bit more space to walk and move, and those can help your nervousness. Okay, last executive functioning tip. Practice your interview skills. This is so important. We did a whole other video about it. It's called Interview Tips for Autistic Adults. Prepare with Confidence. And I really encourage you to watch that if you haven't already. Please check out that video because we gave so many tips for practicing your interview skills and why it's so important. And it really, really is going to help you feel more confident, which when you feel confident, people can really, they can tell. They feel that you're confident too. So that can help you get a job. And that is the executive functioning block of like how executive functioning can come up as a barrier for getting a job. So if you feel like you have difficulty with any of those things, you can look up strategies for making those things easier. But there's a lot of information online about executive functioning. The second barrier for getting a job is communication. A lot of the job search process is social. You have to talk to people. You have to write emails. You have to understand this kind of vague corporate language or like unwritten rules about interviews and things like that. And you have to answer interview questions, which can be really intimidating. So, for somebody on the autism spectrum, communication can already be challenging, even with people that you feel really comfortable around. So totally understandable that this would be one of the hardest things about the job search process. However, the good news is that lots of practice is going to improve your confidence, like I just said. So I can't emphasize this enough. I urge you to practice beforehand for your interview. Eye contact. Let's talk about eye contact. People with autism, people on the autism spectrum, may struggle to make eye contact with others. Not everyone has the same degree of discomfort with eye contact, but it is very common. So, generally, most people who will be interviewing you will feel like eye contact is a good thing. They want you to make eye contact with them because it signals to them that you're confident, that you are trustworthy and that you're paying attention. So if you're looking off into the distance while they're talking, they might think, this person's not listening to me. But they might not know that eye contact is difficult for you. So here are some ways to accommodate for that. You can practice looking in the general direction of the person or just looking near them to show interest in the conversation. You can practice looking at somebody for a few seconds and then looking away a little bit. Or you can try to look at them while they are talking. While they're talking, you can just look at their nose or their forehead. You don't have to look in their eyes necessarily. But look at them while they're talking to you. And then while you are talking, you might find it easier because you're focusing on what you're saying. And you don't need to spend all your mental energy focusing on eye contact. So while you're talking, you can kind of look away or look kind of to the side of them. I would really recommend practicing that with somebody before you go into an interview and making sure it doesn't look like too intense, because sometimes if you're like staring at somebody's mouth, that can be kind of uncomfortable for somebody, for example. Okay, practice conversations as well. Interviews are basically just very structured conversations. So the interviewer is going to tell you about the company and you are going to tell them about yourself. Some important tips that you might have trouble with. It is very important to wait until the interviewer is done talking before you start talking. That's number 1. Number 2, if you are struggling to understand the question, you are totally fine. It is totally okay to ask for clarification or to ask for the question to be repeated. Number 3, if you are really, really struggling with the interview, you can consider requesting a reasonable accommodation. This is part of your rights as under the Americans with Disabilities Act. You're allowed to ask for a reasonable accommodation, and if you need more clarification on accommodations, we have information about that on our website as well. But one example is that you are allowed to request the interview questions in advance. If you have a disability that requires or that would make that interview easier for you, if you had the questions beforehand, you're allowed to ask for that, which would be a huge help so you can practice exactly what to say and just nail those questions. So, could be a really big game changer if you want to ask for that. If you want more examples of accommodations that you can ask for, you can look up the Job Accommodation Network. And they have a really good website, and they will give you tons of ideas about work accommodations. Okay, so we talked about executive function, communication, and now we're going to talk about the third barrier for people on the autism spectrum for getting a job, and that is motivation and momentum. It's kind of related to executive functioning, like we said, the goal persistent behavior. But let's say you get your whole resume done. It takes you so much effort. It can be hard to stay motivated to then apply for jobs and do all the interviews. Like, I just spent so much time and effort doing just the first step, and now I have to do 10 more steps. Can be really overwhelming. This is where it is really important to have a support system. If you're a parent, it is really important to continue to motivate your child, keep them on track, make a schedule. This is where you can really come in and break tasks down into smaller steps. And again, writing down your goal is so helpful. You can write, I will get my first job in marketing by the fall of 2025. Or you can say, I will get an entry-level job or an internship by May of 2026 so that I can save money. Anything specific will help you stay on track. Make it personal and meaningful to you and look at it often. There's some research that shows that people who write down their goals are 42% more likely to actually achieve those goals because they know what they want, they know exactly what they're aiming for instead of just having a vague idea like, oh, I want a job, I don't know what I want to do, I don't know when, just want a job someday. It is really helpful to have a very specific idea in mind. So those are the 3 barriers and some tips on how you can manage them. Getting a job doesn't have to be scary or confusing necessarily. There's a lot out there, including our resources about how to make it easier for you. If you are a parent, we know that everyone's different and your teen might just need a plan that works for them. That is also where we come in. So we can create individualized plans, really get to know your teen and what works for them, what doesn't, and we would love to help. So please reach out to us if you're interested, or look at our website for more information, subscribe to our channel, and visit our website for more videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.